Hello, welcome. I am Paul,
And I'm Dave.
and we're gonna go through and tier list rank some GameCube games. I'm good at talking. So first up, we have Animal Crossing. Now you know my feelings on the Animal Crossing franchise, Dave. Convince me not to immediately
Here,
put this in S.
eh, I can somewhat understand that with you. Again, it's the case of when this first came out to when it came out to us in the States and where its popularity sort of sat at the time. In my case, it would probably sit in A because aside from everything else on the system, this was quintessential to have on the GameCube. But yeah, I'm not going to argue too much with you because with you, sometimes it's pointless.
I will put it in A because I know that for me, Animal Crossing or if it has Animal Crossing or Harvest Moon on the box, it probably gets an immediate S. But for everybody else, it probably wouldn't. So I'll go with A, just because.
Well, in the past, that would most likely be the case. Nowadays, everyone pretty much agrees. They very much enjoy Animal Crossing.
Yeah, maybe. Next up is Chibi Robo, which I don't think either of us have played.
Yeah, no. I do understand the premise and base gameplay of it, but even then, it was kind of. It had quirkiness, but the quirkiness kind of influenced some of the gameplay, which made it a little tricky to play sometimes.
Yeah, I've never played it either. So we'll move on to Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, which used those stupid friggin' bongos.
Indeed, it was mildly fun, but you would destroy the controller, so it wouldn't last long.
Where are we putting this one?
It was interesting and fun, but it was its weird experimental time of, hey, we made this fancy controller that looks like bongos. Let's make a platformer out of it. And as it stands, kind of going with an older game design of it's based on a point system for each one of the levels. And
Yeah,
sometimes that's not your jam, but when you get into it, and it's fun and interesting. But it's also one of the ones that it only has so much to kind of go with. So once you get all the ranks and make it through all the story, which is relatively short, there's not much there.
yeah. This is one of those games where I'm like, why wasn't this just in arcades? Like, why was this on a home console?
It's also wouldn't be surprising that this most likely was in arcades, but most likely just in Japan.
Yeah, I mean that's probably true. So are we B or C for this? Because
Fine with
it's not
sticking
a
this up.
bad game. It's just not.
No, there's definitely nothing bad about this particular one, but just with particular experiences and especially with what you needed to actually play the game in certain respects, it could easily be switched around for the controls to stick it on a controller, but even then it'd be a case of you need to hit the shoulder buttons and push just a singular button and that's it.
So B or C. I'm gonna leave this one up to you because you've played it more.
No, I'm fine with sticking this in C.
C.
Like, interesting enough, but if you didn't have the money to shill out for getting all the stuff that was required, you're fine for skipping it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Next up is F Zero GX. I don't know how familiar you are with the F Zero game.
Played a couple of the levels and had some races with a couple of friends in the past. Also, have understood how incredibly difficult this game can be. So, it's kind
Yes.
of pushing the question of where to place it.
The F Zero games have always been kind of brutally difficult, but they're a ton of fun and they have a great sense of speed.
Indeed.
I would go A or B for this because I really like F Zero.
No, I can understand that. I think just as kind of a backhanded compliment, it's the best F-Zero game that you can play.
Yeah, probably. Because I mean, we haven't got one. Oh, I think there was one on the Game Boy Advance that came out after this, but we don't really get them that often.
Yeah, hardly if ever. Like, aside from the one that you mentioned on the Game Boy Advance, this has been the last real F-Zero game, aside from a course in Mario Kart 8.
Yeah, yeah, we don't really get them. But where are we thinking for this one?
Again, just sort of wondering what specific popularity or where it would sit with me. It would most likely be lower, but just with its fun factor and whatnot, I'm fine with B unless you're thinking it needs to be higher.
No, I'm fine with B. I feel like that's fair. Next up
Hmm.
is Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, which I did not play a ton, even though I played the handheld Fire Emblem games.
Indeed. And this was kind of their foray of, oh man, things are kind of advancing. We need to make a bit more of an actual 3D Fire Emblem game. And there's Fire Emblem has pushed a little bit more into our neck of the woods to kind of upgrade with things, but still it was kind of niche, where it was a little bit more popularized a bit more in Japan than it was here. But in my case, this was my first experience with Fire Emblem, and it is an experience if you are not ready for it.
Yeah, I think Fire Emblem was one of those series that kind of surprised people with its, I guess it's difficulty, but just kind of like most every other like RPG or this kind of strategy game that we had got at this point didn't have permadeath. Whereas this game, it's like, no, no, that character's dead. You don't get them back.
It pretty much brings up the aspect of, well, sorry to bring this up because it relates to a thing that you're not super related to with Pokemon, the rule set of Pokemon where you can only catch one, and anytime it faints, it dies, so you can't use it anymore. So, that's what Fire Emblem is in a nutshell.
Yeah. Where would you put this on our rankings here?
For this one, just with where it sits, as well as my own feelings about it, because I've only managed to play through the game once. Again, RPG, whole lot of story and other stuff that you gotta go into. But just with what it does and the actions that can go into it for an older Fire Emblem game, I'm fine for sticking this up in the A.
A. I'm happy to do that because I love the Fire Emblem games.
Hmm.
Next up is Kirby Air Ride, which is a game that everybody else seems to like, but I'm like lukewarm on.
Because, well, I'm two minds of it. The one mind of it is S S S S S S S. But then the other side is it's essentially three little mini games where everyone and their grandma is just obsessed with the one mini game that's on it.
Yeah, I mean, if this were up to me, it would be C, but I know you're
That's
going to want
definitely
to
a,
put it higher than that.
well, honestly, with me, just with how it sits with the GameCube games, it sits as it's the same as the N64, and one of the biggest focuses of this game system, aside from its graphical updates and the style of it, is party games. Anything that you can play with multiple players, this was one of the big systems to do it.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's absolutely something Nintendo's always been pretty good about was having multiplayer and like good multiplayer experiences.
Mhm.
I just think there are
So
much better
again,
ones on the GameCube.
no, that's true, but definitely just with my experiences playing the game, with I believe you and some of the other friends that we've had in the past, I'm fine with at least pushing this up into B because again, it's a big party game that's just anytime anyone comes over and wants to have fun with it, it's on the list to go through.
Yeah, I'm happy to put it in B. B's fine with me.
Hmm.
So next up, Luigi's Mansion.
Yes, Luigi's first solo adventure, aside from the one that we don't talk about.
Mario's missing.
I said don't talk about it. No, you
I,
brought the demons upon us.
I had totally forgotten about that game, Dave, and you just reminded me of it. I'm so happy.
Well, I'm glad somebody is, because most everyone is not.
So where are we putting
But
Luigi's
anyway,
Mansion?
this one, it was an interesting experiment with going with a different style of this particular one. And again, with this being one of the very first GameCube games to kind of release with the system. But
Yeah,
again, just as it is, it's another one of the ones that it is short. once you kind of get around all the particular things or try to even go for 100%, it's only going to take you a couple of hours or so to really make it through the story.
Yeah, I think when we looked it up last time, it was around 6 hours.
Hmm.
Which,
So
I mean,
again, I'm just sort of wondering, this wasn't like a super big smash when it sort of came out, but it at least sort of had enough relevancy to stick around and continue on with it.
yeah, and
I'm thinking either C or B, depending.
I feel like 6 hours is a reasonable length. I mean, I know at the time games were longer, but I'm like, oh, the Uncharted games are only like 8 hours, and I wouldn't hold that against them.
Hmm.
So you were thinking B or C, you said?
Somewhere around in there, yeah.
Let's go B. I feel like it's better than Jungle Beat.
Okay.
Given the option, I would play this over Jungle Beat.
Okay.
Next up is Mario Golf Toadstool Tour.
Yes.
Now, I am a fiend for Mario Golf games, so I mean, I want to put this pretty high.
No, that's understandable. Again, I'm just trying to specifically remember about this one. Because I think it kept most of the base kind of controls of typical sort of golf games, but there was at least kind of the Mario edge
Yeah,
and whatnot that it had this particular one.
it's a Mario Golf game. It like they're very good golf games, but they have a bit of the Mario wackiness to them.
Okay, but not to the extent that there's specific gimmicks or other certain things within the game. Because
Not
I
that
don't
I
think it was until the most recent golf game that they started doing that.
Yeah, I don't think this one really had a whole lot of that. I think you could do like power shots or something, but that was about it.
Okay.
Again, I haven't played this game in probably 10 years. I just remember really enjoying it.
Hmm.
So I would be looking A or B for this one, but
Uh, be as it sits.
B,
Because,
I'm happy
again,
with that.
it's a Mario sports game, which is there, is definitely playable, but it's not exactly going to set the world on fire.
Okay, so this is another one you're going to have to convince me not to put an S right away, and that's Mario Kart Double Dash.
Good sir, if it was anywhere lower than S, I would have to come over to your place and
Okay,
smack you.
good.
This is one of the best Mario Kart games.
Oh, disagree. It is the best Mario Kart game.
Duly noted.
It is my favorite, even though it's like I think the only one I've never owned. This is a fun
No,
fact.
as it is, I have a copy of it, so it's around.
I just love being able to switch the driver and the passenger and like the special items and the whole thing. It's great.
Yeah, it gives an interesting kind of spin to the kart racers, where with all the other previous ones, it's just kind of been simple kart racer, simple kart racer, simple kart racer, not too much different or changes in most cases. Where Nintendo was kind of like, wait, we're doing the thing that we're not known for. Invent something new for this Mario Kart game, but what else could we do? We add a driver? It's like, oh,
Yeah, and it added like this really cool layer of strategy about like putting certain people together. Like, oh, so much fun. I could talk about it for forever. But we shall move on to Mario Party 4.
indeed.
And this is the GameCube area of Mario Party where I completely checked out. So you're going to have to really kind of steer the ship here.
I'll do the best I can, but again, it's been a couple of years, and despite playing through all the particular Mario games, it was kind of a case of at the time there was the whole trading aspect where done with the game you can trade in to get discounts on purchasing games. A Mario Party was always kind of the one to add to the list of being like, well, done with this, let's move on to the next one to get a new game.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
So
Yeah.
with four, it added at least a couple of interesting concepts and whatnot to it, but there wasn't anything super groundbreaking with four jumping from the N64's three. It was still loads of fun and still the mayhem and craziness of it. But I think aside from a mini game or two that's still remembered to this day, it's at the very least a Mario Party, but it's nothing that's again gonna set the world on fire. I'd probably say C for where to place it.
C sounds good to me. So now Mario Party 5.
Yes, with 5. Again, they add sort of a different concept to it, but still there wasn't too much that kind of really experimented with the gameplay ideas or other things that happened with it. Yeah, honestly, it wasn't until the later ones that they sort of tried to change things up, but then started to push a little bit into they added a couple too many features to make it interesting. Yeah, around the same place as Mario Party 4 on C.
We'll go with C. How about Mario Party 6? Because they had to release apparently 4 of these on one console.
Indeed. But out of all the particular ones, this one I'd say would be my favorite from the GameCube era since with its particular concept of switching each of the boards from a day stage to a night stage,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
you figured you figured in some cases it would have been too much, but it gives a switch up to everything in the game where you try to organize things with how each of the turns run to where you are on the board to where you're trying to go, and it gets zany and fun and interesting and adds a little bit more of a crazy aspect to it. So I think as it is, I'd stick this higher up in B just
B.
to give my affinity to it.
Fair enough. That's works for me. Mario Party 7.
And this is the part where they jumped a little bit too far. It mildly started in 6 because a particular aspect they added to it is they made several separate mini games where you used a plug-in microphone that was included with it.
Oh, I remember the microphone.
So there
Oh.
was a couple games like that, and it's like it's interesting. It added a couple little bucks to it, but it wasn't too much at the time if you had the money for it. Then 7 added that along with everything else it added to it. And it started like, okay, now you're pushing far too much. And there wasn't any real hook or anything that really stuck to it. So 7 would drop down to where 4 and 5 are
Okay.
in C. They're
That
still
worked.
fun, but it's just the case of it's a Mario Party.
Yeah, fair enough. So next up, Mario Power Tennis, which again, I am going to rank very, very high, and you're probably going to want to pull me down. I love them. Look, I love any of the Mario sports games. They're like some of my favorite. There's something about them that they're just good, wacky fun.
Yes, I don't doubt. I have memories of playing through this particular one.
So where are we thinking for this? Because I'm gonna again want to go A, but I'm thinking you're probably going to be lower.
And just with the particular aspects and whatnot with it, it's definitely good in sort of a party game, but I'm thinking maybe B for it, honestly.
B, I can live with B. B, I'm okay with. So we'll move
Hmm,
on to Metroid Prime.
indeed. So, the super big Metroid game that came out and showed off Samus to a generation of people that was like, who is this character?
Yeah, because we never got a Metroid game on the N64, if memory serves.
Pretty much the only one game that showed her off was Smash Brothers,
Yeah, yeah.
where it's the one character in armor. It's like, oh man, this dude's amazing until you electrocute her and you see her model. It's like, wait, why does she have long hair? Why does her chest look weird? Oh my god, she's a woman.
Yes. Um, this was really what, like, I'm not going to lie, this game is going to be high up for me personally, just because it's the first Metroid game I ever played.
Hmm.
So, I mean, for me, it would probably be A, but again, I'm expecting
No,
probably.
that's completely understandable. I also wouldn't be surprised if this sticks up in S.
Really?
People nowadays in the Nintendo sphere are kind of like they're interested in waiting for the next Metroid game to come out on the Switch for when that's going to happen, but you can't even play any of the Metroid games unless you have Wii U and downloaded the trilogy that came out. But that's a big thing about it. This game started the 3D Metroid series that is an experience that hasn't been upgraded or shown off in any sort of way for quite some time.
I still do not understand why Nintendo hasn't released the trilogy on Switch. Especially because they're
Yeah,
making Metroid Prime 4. Why not put the other 3 games out there and let us have them?
it would make perfect sense, and it's available, but it's the case of you need a Wii U and you need to purchase it off of the site, which you can't use a credit card for. You need to do their crazy backwards method for getting money onto the site to actually purchase it.
Yeah, but I can't then play it on my Switch. That's the problem. See, here's the
Indeed.
thing. The Switch, very, very successful. The Wii U, very unsuccessful.
Do not doubt. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the case of once everything is finished up with the Wii U store and everything closes next year, there's either going to be either announcements for when 4 is going to be released, and it's like, oh yeah, there's the trilogy of the other games that you can play on the Switch that you guys can have.
Yeah, I'm
And it's
kind of
like,
thinking that's what it
fucking
is.
finally, what took you so long?
I almost wouldn't be surprised if when they announce a release date for 4, they like shadow drop the trilogy and they're like, oh, by the way, like they'll do a direct where they'll say like, hey, 4 is coming out on this date, and then oh, by the way, the original trilogy's available now on the eShop. That wouldn't surprise me.
But yeah, I agree that this would sit up around an A. It's one of the big GameCube experiences that was out.
Do you want to go A or S? Because you seem to want to put it in S. And I'm fine putting it in S because I love this game.
Okay, just with, again, its experience, and even the day, if you actually stuck this up on a GameCube, someone was like, well, this game looks neat. How old is it? It's like a couple of years. And it's like, oh, this is good for what it does. Again, I
Dave,
probably have to boot it up and actually see it now, but
Dave, this isn't a couple years old. This is like 20 years old.
yeah.
We're old. So are we sticking it in
But
S?
yeah, I'm fine with sticking in an S.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes.
So as it sits, there's really not too much of a change from the engine and all the stuff from there. At the very most, it was just Nintendo's idea at the time, as well as trying to keep up with competitors. Because around Metroid Prime's release, it was Halo, everyone's online experiences, and all that sort of stuff really exploding the gaming sphere at the time.
Yeah.
And with the next game release, they added a multiplayer to it, which is something, but it's really not that much to kind of add to this experience. Because on whole, this is just more Metroid with different gameplay aspect that they added to it.
Yeah, so where are we thinking to place this one?
It kind of really depends on your experience with it. Because in my case, I always found it tricky with working at this one where you have to bounce between two different worlds to get certain things done. And it can be a bunch of backtracking and hassles with trying to get from place to place. So it's still an interesting enough experience, but unless you can really understand it enough or you know what to do, it can be a bit of a hassle with sometimes to play through it.
So I'm hearing probably like
So
around a B for you.
it'll B or A. It's still a good experience, but there's definitely some things in there that, depending on if you're playing it, would most likely hamper your experience in some way, shape, or form.
I'm going to say we put it in A because I feel like it's still a really good game.
Okay.
So next up, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door.
S. S.
Yeah, I knew that was
S.
coming. It's already in there.
Yes.
Next up, this is another one I'm going to have to just veto immediately, Dave. It's Pikmin, and it's an S.
Adios. In my case, I never really liked the base idea when they first introduced Pikmin. Like, the idea about it was definitely interesting, but the issue with it having more of a time limit at around that time was kind of like, I'm not sure if I'm actually good enough to make it through this game without being completely annihilated with this time limit added on.
Yeah, Pikmin is one of my favorite GameCube games. And yes, there is a time limit, but in all fairness, like it's 30 days, you have to get 30 parts, and you sneaky don't have to get all 30 parts.
Okay.
I think you have to get like 18 of them if memory serves.
So there's margin for error at the very least.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of parts that aren't necessary. but it's such a fun game. I love commanding my Pikmin to go and attack or carry things. Oh, it's so much fun.
Again, the one thing that comes to mind was recently they had a direct, and the director of the series had an actual Japanese word that gave a description of the Pikmin game's game style. Dondori, I believe it was.
Okay, I did not watch the Nintendo Direct because I basically never do. But
Mm.
yeah, I can't wait till we get Pikmin 4. I want
Mm.
it.
It'll be interesting sometime next year.
I want to be able to sit at work on my lunch break and play Pikmin 4 because I will be so happy when that happens. Anyway, Pikmin 2. Did you ever play that?
So in my case, this was my Pikmin experience.
Okay.
And it was a little bit easier because it still had the time aspect of you only had a certain amount of time for the day to actually do things. But then there's the aspect of you go into dungeons and then the time is essentially infinite for you to travel through, get all the particular stuff, and get out.
Right. Okay.
It was definitely interesting enough. Again, at the very most, it was just the case of adding an additional player. And despite the fact that you could use them both, I don't think the idea was really involved until the next game, which is years off from
Yeah.
where this one sits. But nevertheless, it was still fun enough for playing through this Pikmin. I definitely understand your enjoyment of it, of controlling all the Pikmin to doing jobs and other sorts of things from there.
Attack!
Yes.
Attack! Attack my minions.
So as it is, it's still fairly good, but I'm not sure if this would be bumped up to the same as Pikmin in S or if it would just sit in A. I'm fine with sticking it in either.
I'll go with A because I didn't play this one nearly as much as I did the original.
Okay.
Next up is Pokemon Coliseum, which is a game I don't think I ever played, but if memory serves, this is just like Pokemon Stadium 3.
No.
No? Okay.
This is Pokemon Stadium when it decides to add a story to it.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I seem to remember
Because
this now.
now you're a criminal.
Wait, what?
In Pokemon Coliseum, you play an ex-criminal from an evil organization whose main objective was to steal Pokemon from other trainers.
Can wait. Oh, you're an ex-criminal. That's not nearly as much fun. I wanted to mug people.
But now you're an ex-criminal going around the world trying to stop an evil organization from creating shadow Pokemon. Pokemon that are kept by other trainers, but you literally have to steal them from battle to train them, purify them, and use them as your own.
So I still kind of get to mug people.
Yes.
Okay. You're actually selling me a Pokemon game right now.
Well, best of luck. It's one of the harder ones to find.
God damn it, of course it is. Okay, where are we
But
putting this one?
nevertheless, interesting enough concept, and it's kind of one of the ones that if you really wanted to, you could still work with this game and play with the Pokemon in future generations with how that whole system works. Again, just in my own experience with this one, I've only played it a bit and it's not within my own collection, but it's still a fairly, excuse me, good game as it is.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever really been a
Like
bad
maybe either
Pokemon
A
game.
or B.
A or B? I'm where are you thinking? Because I would be happy with either.
Well, pretty much if you ever mention this sort of concept to anyone who's played the game, they usually mention this one first. So
Let's put it
I'm
in.
fine with sticking it up in A.
Let's put it in A. Because Pokemon, they've never really made a bad game that I'm aware of.
Hmm.
Next up is Pokemon XD, and I can't read the subtitle, but who cares? It's the Legend of something.
Yes. This is the particular one that I have and have played through of Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness.
Gale of Dark. Sure, why not? Because that's a real title. Where are we sticking this one?
So, as it is, it still sticks in the same play setting and story. You still have to catch shadow Pokemon. It gives a couple of additional quality of light features, so it wasn't as difficult or hassle intensive as the previous game, but it's a little bit more kiddie, cutesy in most aspects. There's not really that much changes from the story. Depending on if you wanted to play one or the other, one of them is fine. But if you mention the series to anyone, they're most likely going to mention Coliseum in comparison to XD.
So we going B for XD?
Yeah, as it is, I essentially kind of count them as both the same game, but yeah, B is fine since it's a step down from the Coliseum.
Okay, next up is Resident Evil 4, a game which I tried to play again recently and does not hold up well. Don't at me or put messages or put comments below. You know I'm right.
Now, I wouldn't be surprised. I suppose the question is, what system did you play it on?
PC.
Okay. So a little bit better. Like, it would be that, the Wii,
Oh,
possibly GameCube or PlayStation 2.
the game came out on every console imaginable. It was on the GameCube, PS2, PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, I think, Windows. It's been on everything.
Yeah, pretty much. I think they're still working on trying to get it on a toaster, but still.
Dave, somebody's probably got it running on something ridiculous like that. Like,
But is it a toaster? That is the gold standard of what your game needs to play on.
where are we thinking for Resident Evil 4? Because, I mean, I know this is like a really beloved game, but I have a hard time because I didn't play it when it initially came out.
Okay. Because again, this is one of the ones that I got to a little later, and my experience was on the Wii, so I had controller assist for all the particular gameplay style and whatnot. The interesting thing that I've been hearing is everyone is excited for the remake that they're going to be
Yes.
putting out on the Switch either next year or some other time. I remember they were announcing about it.
Is
But the
it
one
actually.
thing everyone was, yeah, they were saying that they was going to get a re-release.
Yeah, I knew it was getting a remake, but is it. The remake is coming to Switch. That's kind of surprising.
Well, no, I can't specifically remember what system they were saying to, but the biggest thing that everyone was saying about it was just how bad it's aged. Because within the older version of the game, Leon is very quippy and not the, well, partially the cringy kind of quippy, but also kind of the starting to get into the ew territory kind of quippy nowadays.
Understandable.
So it's kind of the case of hmm, what are they gonna do with the sequel and other sorts of cases like that? But I think on whole, just with my experience with it, this was the turning point for the Resident Evil series of getting out of real tank style controls, more third person action style. Yeah, it would still sit in A, I would say, since
Yeah.
I think it was the case that it was first released on the GameCube before it went to everything else.
Yes, it was part of. I think it was called the Capcom 5, where they it was Resident Evil 4, and then oh crap, I don't remember what the other games were in that. But yeah, it was one of those where Capcom was going to make like these 5 exclusives for the GameCube, and then 4 of them ended up on other consoles.
Yeah, I do remember one from that list, which is not on this GameCube list, you monster for whoever created this, which was Beautiful Joe.
That's right, that was one of them. There was that, and there was Piano 3, which is the only one I think that remained exclusive, which I'm sorry, GameCube owners. I was one of you. I understand your pain. Um,
Yeah,
oh, was like Killer 7 one of them?
yes, that one there.
Yeah, okay, and there was another, but I can't remember which. Anyway, we should move on to the next game here, which is Resident Evil Zero.
Yeah. At the very most, I mostly know this through gameplay, let's plays, and other sorts of things with this one.
Yeah, yeah.
It's still stuck to the same older formula of Resident Evils with tank controls and other sorts of things. Having 2 players, but also adding on the caveat of you have 2 players to control now, and it's like, Hmm.
Yeah, I never really played Zero because I think it's a prequel to the original Resident Evil, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Um, I would be fine putting this in either B or C.
Yeah, I'm fine with C.
C. Okay, I'm good with that. Next up, we'll go to Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut.
Yeah, it's a Sonic game. I believe the re-release of
It's the
Sonic that
re-release
was.
of Sonic Adventures from the Dreamcast, but they did add a little bit of cut content to this one.
Hmm.
It isn't nearly as good as the sequel. I would be fine putting this in B.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's still a decent 3D action adventure Sonic game, but it definitely wasn't the big Sonic game at the time that if you wanted to show off 3D Sonic, this would be the one to show off. And this one was not it.
Yeah, if you want to show off 3D Sonic, you show people Sonic 06.
You monster.
Anyway, next up is Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, which
Which was always the funs.
I want to put this in A because I love this game.
I do not disagree. It is the fun. And it also is the case of it had a particular feature that everyone and their grandma, whenever this game is mentioned, absolutely adores and wants back in some respect, which was the Chow Garden, which I vaguely remember, but it wasn't anything that completely absorbed my life.
Oh, I remember the Chow Garden. The Chow Garden was so good. The only thing I dislike about Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was having to do the either Rouge or Knuckles levels where you had to find the gems. Those were a massive pain in the ass.
Well, it was one of the particular aspects that was stuck within adventure and came into this particular aspect. So, no matter what, you're going to get a stage with that particular sort of style. In my case, I didn't mind it too much. I always enjoyed any one of the particular gameplay styles that was there. And depending, some of the stories kind of gave you a level after level of a character again, but it always jumped from one different style to
Yeah,
another, so nothing kind of outstayed its welcome.
yeah, I just found those really annoying. But anyway, let's move on to Sonic Heroes, which is where you had all three characters at once.
Yes.
I did not play a ton of Sonic Heroes, I'll be completely honest.
I managed through it, and just in the base story with it, it's perfectly fine. And even with how many characters that you can play with, it kind of gives you difficulty styles right off the bat. You
Hmm.
want an easier adventure, go with the Amy Rose and her trio of characters. If you wanted something a little harder, go with Shadow and the Dark Team. And if you wanted something absolutely ridiculous, you go with the characters that is like, wait, these characters were in Sonic?
So where are we thinking for Sonic Heroes?
I'm fine with sticking it around same as DX and B. Since it's fine, but it's a bit glitchy in some places. And if you want to actually see the end, you have to complete all four stories 100%.
Oh god, I hate that. Anyway, next up is Sonic Mega Collection, which I had this and this makes me so happy.
Okay. Because in my case, it was a bit of a case of analysis paralysis, where there was just so many choices of games to play through, and me and my experiences with the older Sonic games, I could not make it through that much of it.
Oh no, I'm terrible at them, but I love them.
Hmm.
Um, I would probably put this in either probably B. What are you thinking?
My thought was either B or C.
Let's go. Let's go B. I think it's better than some of the games in C. So next up is Soul Calibur 2.
Yes, the fighter game that has Link in it.
Yes. Yeah, so GameCube got Link, Xbox got Spawn, and who did PS2 get? Because each version had an exclusive character.
I can't specifically remember the name, but it was a famous character from Tekken.
Oh, okay. It was one of the Tekken characters. Okay, yeah, I don't remember who, but that was kind of a fun gimmick. Like every platform got its own special character, and GameCube getting
Hmm.
Link made sense. And it was kind of cool that like Nintendo licensed out one of their bigger characters to another studio.
Indeed, in comparison to what happened the last time they did that with him.
Oh, don't bring up that 3DO. That's
Oh, you'll bring the terror of Mario is missing and then not bother acknowledging any of the CDI or Zelda games?
look. Th- there's playful ribbing, and then there's destroying people's childhoods.
Yes, I do not doubt.
Anyway, what are we thinking for Soul Calibur 2? Because I remember playing this and enjoying it at the time, but again, haven't played it in
It's
a long time.
definitely fun, and even when you didn't have people around, it had a meaty adventure aspect to it, where it was still fights, but depending on if you were up for reading a couple of blocks of text, there was an actual kind of story along of what you were doing. It was definitely interesting enough to kind of fill in a bit of time or play matches with your friends. So I'm thinking just the thought of whether B or A would be a better spot to stick it.
Um, I mean, I would probably lean towards A.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So next up, we have Star Fox Adventures.
So with this one, still interesting enough with me, though it's the case of this technically isn't a Star Fox game. It's essentially a Zelda clone, which is also the case of a game that Rare was making at the time, and Nintendo was like, hey, the character kind of looks like Star Fox. We could make it a Star Fox game. And it's like, that would give good name recognition. And that's essentially why this game exists.
Yeah, so Rare was making. I think they originally started making it for the N64, and it was called, I think, Dinosaur Planet or something like that.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, and then it became Star Fox Adventures on the GameCube, which was like a launch window game, I think, if memory serves.
Yeah, something like that. Additionally, it was the last Rare game before they got scooped up by Microsoft.
Yeah, yeah. Which, God, we missed out on so many great games because I'm getting bought by Microsoft. But, anyways,
Mm.
where are we putting this one? Because I never really played Adventures.
So again with Adventures, again with me playing through the game as well as seeing a person let's playing through it, it's fine enough with how it is, but it's also a bit repetitive with the story of bouncing with collecting one thing, going out to collect another particular thing.
It's a very rare
Either
game.
it's very good with all the aspect of that, but still just with its mechanics and other particular sorts of things. Either A or B is where it's kind of sitting for me. Just with my knowledge of it, I'm fine with A, but I wouldn't be surprised sticking it down in B.
I'm going to go B. But,
Yeah, fine with that.
okay. Because next up is Star Fox Assault, which is a game I do remember, and I remember quite enjoying.
Well, definitely a case of this is a bit more like what a Star Fox game really should have been going from there. It still has an actual good story aspect to it, but biggest thing, multiplayer aspect.
Yes, there was a lot of fun multiplayer, and you could like jump into vehicles, you could get like a sniper rifle, like there were a bunch of different things you could do, and it was just a ton of fun. Like you had the flying
It
missions, you had the on foot missions, you had like tank missions. There was a good variety to it.
So I'm fine with sticking this up in A just with the memories of it.
Boom, done. Super Mario Strikers. So I want to put this in A because I love this game.
I'm perfectly fine with sticking this up in A too.
Perfect.
Though it's another case of it's a sports game and there wasn't too much aspect of it. This is one of the particular ones I very much remember playing with you and all the other guys from high school. Just multiple games of uh,
Yes.
playing typical soccer, and mostly it's just turning into a strange
I
amalgamation
I
of
think
soccer, rugby, just tackling people into electric
I
fences.
think technically we never played soccer. We played who can hit the other team the most and somehow score. Because I think once we played a game and my team got 1,000 hits.
No,
I
I wouldn't be
I seem
surprised.
to remember there being an award for getting a certain amount of hits, and I was like, I'ma do that. So I literally sat there mashing the hit button all game. It was a good time. Next up is Super Mario Sunshine.
So with me, this was more of my real experience with a Mario platformer. And again, I can't remember who specifically said it, but it was kind of the Mario platformer on training wheels, since it had the additional mechanic of a water backpack where, aside from cleaning, you could hover to adjust where you were in the jump.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah,
with this one, it was fairly popular just with all the particular things, but I'm not sure if I would stick it up in S. I would say this would be either A for me.
yeah. I would go A as well. I've kind of always hoped that they would make a sequel to Sunshine because I really like the cleaning mechanic and having the water backpack and all that. But unfortunately,
Okay.
we never got one.
That's true, but that's an interesting kind of concept, though it brings up the thought of how far could you push the concept, or what interesting changes could you maybe add to it to uh, add into the platforming or whatnot, or where could it supposedly go?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I just there's something about that game that I was always like, I'd like to play more of it.
No, that's an interesting sort of thought.
Yeah. Anyway, next up we have a little game called Super Smash Bros. Melee, and I'll just put that right in F, and we can move along because nobody likes that
Yeah,
game.
yeah, yeah, no, there's really no argument. There's essentially just case if you had this, you immediately had a party in any sort of aspect.
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, nobody likes this game. That's why it's an F. Yeah, I know it's an S. I know. Okay. Next up, Tales of Symphonia, which is a game I didn't play a ton of, but was one of the few JRPG style games that I actually can handle and doesn't make my stomach turn.
That's true. And again, this is a JRPG, and oh boy, this is a JRPG because it takes some time. It's one of the marvelous GameCube games that has two discs.
Yes, I will say though, it does have a very nice art style.
It is very much pretty, and it's something that kind of permeates the entire aspect of the entire Tales series. And depending on when you came into it, uh, out of the Tales series, it was this game and the game that came out on the Xbox 360 that, if you had the chance to go through this game's story, it made you fall in love with the Tales style and game mechanics. And in my case, Symphonia was my first experience with it.
I feel like it was most people's first, so where are we thinking for this one?
I'm mostly wondering whether to stick this up into A, because it's one of the cases of it was definitely good at the time, but if you didn't really catch on to it, it would have passed you by. And mm,
I would be fine sticking this in A.
yeah, A is fine there.
Okay. Next up, we have The Legend of Zelda Four Swords Adventures.
Yes. So this first came up when there was a re-release of A Link to the Past, I think
Yes.
on the Game Boy Advance.
Yes, it was.
And then they added in an extra little gameplay aspect of Four Swords Adventures, where you needed four Game Boy Advances all to connect together with all of the Link to the Past Game Boy Advance games to it, and then you could play the game. So, all the stupid amount of money that you'd actually need to pay to actually get this to work nowadays.
Yeah, this was totally not Nintendo being like, how can we sell more Game Boy Advances? Ah, I
But then,
have
of
an
course,
idea.
they somewhat relent and it's like, well, no one and their grandma is going to experience this aspect to it. So they made a, yeah, I wouldn't exactly say watered down, but sort of another Zelda game with that aspect to it. Of you could easily play the game yourself and have fun trying to control four links in weird little formations, or you could get, again, I think it's the case that you still need the Game Boy Advances and other particular things altogether on
You
a
do.
GameCube to get this game to actually work, which I have. I have no regrets. But when the time actually comes, I'll have the chance to have a Zelda multiplayer experience, which is definitely interesting, but still absolutely ridiculous for trying to get all the stuff together.
Yeah. I am kind of lukewarm on the Zelda series as a whole, and this game didn't help.
Yeah, yeah.
I would put this in B because while it's not a bad game, it definitely wouldn't be the Zelda game on the GameCube I would go to.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Like, if you had all the stuff together and wanted to have a laugh, which there are plenty of Let's Plays out there that have done that already, this is definitely good. But this is a Zelda experience with trying to work with certain aspects. It works, but it's not the best.
Yeah, so next up, we do get to the best, though, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker.
Okay. Because this one has a story to it. Oh boy.
Okay, so here's my argument for putting this in S.
Okay.
I know at the time everybody was super pissed because it didn't have the like hyper realistic graphics that everybody wanted. I was one of them. I was. Until I actually played the game. And then I was like, "Ooh, it's really pretty though." And here's the thing.
Additionally, it's one of the particular games that's completely outlived the aspect of what it was on. Even with its re-release, it never even got any sort of updates to its graphics. It's nearly timeless.
You know, it still looks pretty today. I love the cell shaded look, and I was wrong, Nintendo. I'll admit it. You were right with the cell shaded. It looked better. I'll never say that about Nintendo again, so they should take that while they can. So,
Yeah, I do not disagree, but again, just with my experiences with particular Zelda games, and especially with this one, on whole, with the particular Zelda games that I played, this sits a little bit lower down in comparison to lots of the other Zelda games. But it started to experiment a little bit more of the actual exploration of the world, even more so than the other 3D titles. And it almost comes to the aspect of this was one of the additional predecessors to even Breath of the Wild when it first came out.
yeah. So, where are you thinking for this? Are you wanting to put this in
I'm
like A?
perfectly fine with sticking this up in S.
Okay, good. Because we were about to have a fight if you weren't.
Oh, calm down, because the fight actually came up from the big argument that this game created. So Nintendo heard all the arguments and whatnot from this particular Zelda game and is like, well, maybe we should just give the people what they want, and they created Twilight Princess.
Yes. Which was a cross gen with the Wii, if I'm not mistaken.
It was, and I will never be tremendously angry about it.
Uh, I never really played Twilight Princess because, like I said, I'm not a huge Zelda fan. Where are you thinking for this one?
So in my case, I destroyed Twilight Princess playing through it almost into the double digits of the amount of times I've gone through it. And on whole, it sticks to the base idea of Ocarina of Time to an aspect. It still has interesting enough story. There's nothing super crazy about it. It gets dark in some places, nothing super ridiculous, but it's pretty much will scratch the itch if everyone's like, oh, Wind Waker looks too kiddie. We want something more higher end with all that sort of stuff.
Isn't this
So
the
on
one where you turn
whole,
into a wolf?
it is the one you turn into a wolf.
Okay.
But
That
nevertheless, it brought interesting aspects as well as the best assistant character ever.
who?
A little dark imp by the name of Midna, who is a dick at the start and is the best character at the end despite the terrible tragedy.
Okay, I don't know who this is, but I'm fine with that. Where are you wanting to put this
Oh,
one?
I'm pretty sure if you got the chance to play through the game and met her, you would probably despise her, absolutely love her, and be put into a horrible comatose state with all the bad stuff that happens.
Okay. Where are we thinking for this one? Because it sounds to me like you're going to want to put it in S or A.
I'm fine with sticking this in A because it's still a very big Zelda experience, but For the GameCube, it wasn't the Zelda experience. Thanks, Wii, for stealing this bloody game.
Alrighty, so let's quickly go through what we have in each rank. So in S, we have Double Dash, Metroid Prime, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, Pikmin, Smash Bros. Melee, and The Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker.
Yes.
I would say if you had those 6 games on your GameCube, you had a damn good GameCube library.
Yeah, pretty much. Something to play with friends around and super interesting single player experiences.
Yes, and then in A, we have Animal Crossing, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, uh, Metroid Prime 2, Pikmin 2, Pokemon Coliseum, Resident Evil 4, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, Soul Calibur 2, Star Fox Assault, Super Mario Strikers, Super Mario Sunshine, Tales of Symphonia, and The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess.
I'll be surprised that the A's are filled with a lot of twos.
Yeah, there are a lot of sequels in there, actually. That is kind of interesting. And in B, we have F Zero GX, Kirby Air Ride, Luigi's Mansion, Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, Mario Party 6, Mario Power Tennis, Pokemon XD, Gale of Darkness, uh, Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut, Sonic Heroes, Sonic Mega Collection, Star Fox Adventures, and The Legend of Zelda: Four Swords Adventures. And in C, we have Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, Mario Party 4, Mario Party 5, Mario Party 7, and Resident Evil 0, and nothing in D or F, and then we didn't rank Chibi Robo because neither of us have played it.
Yeah, sadly enough. Though I'm mildly surprised we never bothered discussing about the one particular game that came out before Jungle Beat, which was Donkey Konga!
Oh god, I hate those stupid conga. I hate the stupid bongo thing. It
Yep,
infuriated me
pretty
to.
much the only reason why you even had those bloody bongos.
I never had them because I was like, no, I'm not playing a Donkey Kong rhythm game. You can't make me.
So, additionally, since it wasn't on the list, the one last thing I'll supposedly add on to this list is Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles for the GameCube. The only one Final Fantasy game that actually arrived on the GameCube in any sort of respect.
Okay. I've never actually played it.
Well, it's another one of those wonderful cases of you need a stupid amount of equipment to actually get it to play in multiplayer. But it was interesting enough for the aspect and style that it decided to go with. And it even made an interesting offshoot of games that brought its own interesting concept to the Final Fantasy memorabilia with all of its particular stuff. But as it sits, it would most likely sit in either a C or a B for me.
Okay. I think I have it somewhere. I think it's in my GameCube collection. I've just never actually sat down and played it.
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm gonna have to do that at some point. Anyway, that's been our little ranking some GameCube games. Because the GameCube was good.
It was.
It's not nostalgia. I know everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, it's just nostalgia." No, it was better. It wasn't just because I was younger and happier and not miserable.
If you wanted to play a game, this library has a whole bunch of stuff that you can play that still works today.
It has so many good games. I personally, it's my favorite Nintendo console.
It sits at least in my top three.
Fair enough. So until next time, I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.